It is still spring and kind of chilly outside, but I really wanted to start making summer cards. So I pulled out a new stamp to me. The stamp is by Technique Junkies. I'll have everything linked below here at the bottom if you want to find anything. And I thought I'd make a beach card, and I wanted to see if I could do that with my distress inks. The first thing I did was I cut a quarter panel of watercolor cardstock. You need your cardstock to be able to take some water in this case, so regular like Nina will not work. It'll pill and get kind of gross. The next thing I did was, I think, ingenious. Sticky mats are like all the rage right now. They're sold out everywhere. I couldn't get my hands on one, but I thought, well, I wonder if I could create my own. So I found a divider for a notebook and I cut it up and I sprayed it with Krylon's Easy Tack, which is a repositionable adhesive. I will link this below so you can find it. It is wonderful stuff. I use it all the time. I sprayed it onto this plastic panel, and now when I put my watercolor cardstock on and push it down, it will stick. It'll stick. And the purpose of why this is so awesome is that this plastic underneath will now prevent my watercolor cardstock from warping, which is one of the reasons I always kind of shy away from some of these techniques, because your cardstock warps and all the color ends up around the edges of it and it doesn't look as nice as you wish you had it in your head. But as you can see from the edges, I've stained this. I've made several of these and this has held up great. I've only had to spray it once and I can keep adding cardstock to it and it's working great. So let me show you how I made my card. Let's start off with tea-dye ink, and I sponged a beach. Now you don't need this part to be perfect. You actually kind of want it to be imperfect. This way your beach has some texture to it, has some interest to it. You don't want it to be flat and yucky by any means. So let's see. I'm going to come down about 2/3 of the way because you want to have enough room for your sentiment at the top of your card. And you don't necessarily want it to be even because your shoreline's not going to be even. So your water, can kind of have like a shape to it, I guess, the shape of water. All right, so let's set our tea dye aside for a second and let's pull out brush corduroy. And I have a stippling brush, and this is kind of neat because this takes and puts little speckles of corduroy on top of your tea dye ink. Again, just giving it texture, making it look more like sand. I don't know if the camera is picking this up. I can try picking it up and pulling it closer to the camera. Let me see if I can get it to pick that up. I don't know if you can kind of see the speckles in it, but this is a really cool tool to have in your craft room. I admit I don't use it every day, but when I use it, it's kind of a neat little way to add some color. So we're going to set that aside. Then lastly, we're going to come in with Salty Ocean because that is the color of the ocean, right? And we're going to start sponging some blue onto our panel for ocean, obviously. And in between here, I'm going to add some details, so I'm not super concerned about getting that. And it's okay if there's white because seafoam is white. And I want it to be darker blue at the bottom and kind of fade up to a lighter blue as I'm going. So I think that looks really good. I did leave some fingerprint marks there. I'm not even worried. So we'll set that aside. Now I'm going to get my distress sprayer and I'm going to spray some water. And lift that up, and now I have this cool kind of distressed background. I noticed right here I didn't have any, so I'm going to add a little more water there. There we go. Now we have a whole panel, and also notice how my paper didn't warp. It's not all curled, it's nice and flat, and to me this is just the most priceless little invention ever. Whoever thought of that, good job. I'm telling you, this stuff made it super easy, and I use it for lots of things. So anyway, it's awesome. All right, and the next step was adding the what do they call it, seafoam. I'm using a little bit of stencil paint, and I chose silver because I wanted to add a little bit of sparkle. I know seafoam's really white, but what I'm going to do is with a popsicle stick, I'm kind of just put a tiny bit and smear it. I actually got too much on my brush here, my popsicle stick. I'm just going to pull that down, leaving little clops. I don't want it to be even. I'm just kind of, this is more like applying the paint to your canvas. I'm going to use another tool to spread the paint. So now I have a toothbrush, and I'm going to use the toothbrush to pounce this everywhere, giving this a little bit of texture and making it look uneven. That cool? Gives it kind of a watery look. All right, so now I'm gonna scrape this off, put my stencil paint away, and I'm gonna give this about 5 minutes to dry. I'll come back and check on you then. All right, now that that's dry, I'm gonna take a little bit of brush corduroy. I'm gonna smush it here on my block, and I'm gonna add a little bit of water, and I'm going to use my teeny tiny little fan brush. And I do recommend doing this like in a splat box or someplace you're not going to get little splatters everywhere, because I'm getting them all over my desk. But I love you guys and wanted to show you this and thought it was worth it. And I don't know if the camera is picking it up, but I love this little fan brush because it makes such tiny little splatters. Again, adding to the whole beachy, sandy feel here. Try not to get it in your ocean, I think, but whatever works. I'm going to add a little bit more brushed corduroy on there and another little squirt of water. And this time I'm going to take a regular paintbrush. And one of the things I've noticed when I was looking at pictures of the beach is that there's always wet sand. So if I come in here and I paint in just around this seafoam, which by the way is dry now. I let it sit for like 5 minutes. That's all it took because I'm impatient. I'm just painting in where I think the sand would be wet. And it doesn't have to be exactly following along the lines here. So it kind of looks like the water's receding and just left this edge. I'm just kind of trying to make it look rough, not like I drew an edge in. I'm sure there's watercolor people out there who are cringing. Sorry, people, not a watercolor expert. But there we go. I think that looks a little bit more organic. And just kind of keep going in, adding some where. Cool. I love it. All right, so we're done with our inks, at least our distress inks. Wipe my block off. And now I'm going to get out the stamp. Okay, so now I have my card positioned and the stamp positioned inside a little stamp platform. I'm inking the stamp up, which again is from Technique Junkies, with VersaFine ink. And the reason I'm doing this is, first off, this ink is wonderful. It stamps perfectly black, like a really nice crisp black. And second, it's really good on watercolor paper, and if I do need to add water to this or figure out I want to add something else, it's water safe. So I'm not going to be risking, you know, putting on another type of ink that would smear. I think that looks really good. I might stamp this again just for good measure. I love that. So let me show you too before I do that. This pulls off here really nicely, and look at how it is not warped. I love that. So now I'm going to set this aside to dry. Once the ink is dry, I will trim this down so it's just shy of an A2 card, and I'll be back to show you those results. All right, so here it is. I just trimmed it down just a tiny little bit, put it on an A2 card base. And the last finishing touch that I'm going to do is add some hearts here. So I keep a little bowl of hearts. I just cut them out of whatever little scrap papers I have left, and I keep them on my my table. So I'm going to pick out 3 hearts. Maybe you like it better without the hearts, and see if you can tell me and you like it better with hearts, without hearts. I would love to know what you think of this process. Was this something you would try at home? Was it worth it? I love talking to you guys and hearing what you're thinking and creating. It keeps me motivated to keep making videos. Sometimes I feel like I craft and avoid, and you know, you make a card and you're like, okay, great, and then you just put it in a box and no one ever sees it. Well, that's not true. The person you send it to sees it. I don't know, guys. I like that. So I think I'm going to glue these down. My favorite glue right now is the Barely Art glue. Have you guys tried this? This stuff is the bomb diggity. It holds really nice. It's easy to put on. I live in New York, so I can get it year round. That's another thing. I couldn't get Barely Art glue. Or I'm sorry, the art glitter glue at certain times of the year. All right, well, there is our finished card. I'm going to show you these. I made a couple other versions of this, but I actually think this one's my favorite. I just love the way the distress ink distressed, like these little spots. They just fell in the perfect spots on this card, I think. So I really like that. But here are the other ones. I made a side version. I thought this one's really masculine, so I left the hearts off of it. Here's my original. And then I thought I would try one without any of the stencil paint, and I just put some white twine on there. So I'd love to hear what you think. You can see more photos of these on my blog, and I hope you get some crafty time today, guys. Thanks for watching.